what are some of the best parts of growing older? Yes.
Being able to appreciate all the things you didn't appreciate when you were younger. The memories that you had,
Okay.
the traditions that you had, or just the things around you that you're like, wow, that's something that you're glad I had, like the mom.
Yeah.
I'm appreciative, and I'm more appreciative of her now than when I was 16 hearing me that.
Well, and parents are a great example of that. We can learn to appreciate things that we didn't at the time, and appreciating our parents is a big one, isn't it? Yeah.
It helps ownership if you're able to own the house.
Sure.
Just memories.
Memories, yeah, absolutely. What else, Mike?
I can piggyback on the home ownership part. Just coming here and learn how to clean out a dryer vent. Well, that's something I can pass on to my kids. So what I really mean to answer the question is like acquiring more wisdom.
Acquiring more wisdom. That's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
If you want to know what it's on as a $20 tool, it's 35 feet long. You can do that all with you.
Or we just borrow yours.
Let me know.
We will just do a leak.
What, Anna?
I think seeing like the fruit of seeds that were planted before. So the older you get, the more you'll see that like with your kids and or if you're a teacher with students, like you don't realize these happen until years later. And even just things in your own life, like if you make good choices, or if you grow up in a home where you were like taught good things, you see the fruit of that more as you grow older.
I like that. Seeing the fruit of the choices and the fruit of the things that you've done over your life. I like that. That's good. I expect a whole lot of wisdom coming out of this general area.
Kind of voted for
Grandkids and great-grandkids. Yeah. Paul, you voted against grandkids? I know. Larry.
Right, I thought the best part is not having to do it again.
Which part?
Going through the younger years.
Going through younger years and not having to do that again?
You know, it's sad because some people say, I wish I was, they might be a teenager or 20 years. I wish I was 40. I said, well, I tell them, don't wish your life away because you'll be here, 40 will be here before you
Yeah.
know it. I said, then you wish you'd be 60 and then you're retired.
Two things.
Yeah, go ahead, Jim.
God never changes, or he hasn't changed in my 85 years. And he's always been faithful.
Yeah. Yeah, God never changes and he's always faithful. And some of that perspective, you can see God's faithfulness over the years and at different times and in different ways. Yeah. Yeah. Anything else?
I'm just gonna. I feel that same way. I feel you can't see God working unless you look backwards. Sometimes.
Yeah.
Most of the time, right?
Yeah.
You make a decision in life and you think God's directing you. That you're following God's will, but you can't always tell in the moment. You have to look back with perspective and see. Yeah. I mean, that's how you know God is faithful. You can say that for 85 years because you've seen it for 85 years. So I think, look with wisdom and respect.
I like that.
And I think too, for me, even as you grow older, you're still experiencing new things.
Mm-hmm.
So growing older means you're not necessarily, in some ways you might still be static, but new experiences are out there.
Yeah.
And available.
Yeah, I like that. New experiences, definitely. Any others?
Even the routine experiences seem to be more appreciated. Like if I went for a walk at 16, that was lame. Go for a walk now, and you have a whole different appreciation for nature and things there. So just the things that used to be routine, you seem to appreciate.
Okay. I like that. Scott.
Yeah, I was thinking about recently, and I think about this more and more, and I guess that's why I'm going to talk about that, is it's funny, but the older I get, I'm pretty totally shake, but the more I'm looking forward to heaven. It's close, it's closer than it was. So the more I'm looking forward to heaven. And our table also wants to share a very funny
Yeah. But anticipating heaven, being with the Lord, I appreciate that, Scott. Yeah, that hope becomes more real for a number of reasons. Sure. Brian. Not everybody who's grown old has seen the Lions do well, Brian. That's not a universal...
Knowing that through some of the bad mistakes you made earlier in your youth.
Well, this table saw the Lions win the championship.
Is that right?
Oh my gosh, yeah, 55, 57.
57. You won. You saw the Lions win.
It's all personnel.
Paul, I don't know why everybody's so excited about it. You've seen it. What's the big deal? Fred, what were you going to say?
As I get older, I realize more of the things that people did that had an impact on my life. And like, for instance, my father used to say when I was a teenager, "You want to go with me tomorrow morning?" I knew what that meant, but guess where he took me? He took me out to the cemetery, and we had prayer and Bible study together. And so I have a lot of respect for my father's prayer life, and actually felt like when he died, I was losing first quarter.
Sure.
And then the question is, what kind of legacy do I leave behind? As we reflect on what parents said.
Certainly. Yeah. That's good. Well, tonight we're drawing our fall series to a close because tonight's the final night of Kid Connection in junior high. We will resume in January. And when we do, let me skip ahead real quick. There we are. We talked about silence and boomers last week. Now we're talking about the life stage of the silence and the boomers, which is 60 plus. So if you're 60 plus, you're a boomer or a silent. But I started to say, next winter, when we go to January, we're going to spend our 8 weeks on this, drawing a lot from a book called Christians in an Age of Wealth, a biblical theology of stewardship. And what a biblical theology is a biblical theology says, let's trace the story from Genesis to Revelation and see what the Bible says about a particular topic. So, for example, one of those is the goodness of wealth. A biblical theology of the goodness of wealth would look at it with the Pentateuch, and then the wisdom literature, and then the prophets, and then what does Jesus say, and then what does Paul say. So you develop this theme throughout the entire biblical narrative. Now, we're not going to be able to do that in great detail with all of these topics, but we do want to spend time thinking about wealth, thinking about stewardship of the things God has given us. So we're going to talk about that from a biblical perspective, but then also intermingled with that, we're going to have a few of our very good financial guys around the church talk about certain topics. For example, paying for college, no matter what age you are. Bob Patterson is a particular guru of understanding college finances and thinking about college finances. So whether you don't have kids, your kids are elementary, or maybe you're really close, Bob will have a lot of insight on what financial planning for college looks like. Obviously doing simple things like budgets, but budgets are important for people who are just starting out in their career, or maybe you're ending your career and you're switching to a fixed income, right? Thinking about it. So we're going to try to do this, intermingle this biblical theology of wealth and stewardship along with some very practical ideas. So even if you think you're comfortable in some of those areas, always good to hear a double check on our finances. Are we being good stewards? Are we being faithful what God has given us? So that's where we're going to start up in January. But don't come back next week because nobody will be here. A couple of things about the 60-plus crowd. A couple of things about kind of our culture. I found this interesting. 2034, less than 10 years away, it'll be projected where adults 65 and older surpass the number of children 18 and under. So it's becoming a more aged, which makes sense because of when the boomers were born and the age that the boomers are now, right? So that'll be interesting. In the next 10 years, there will be this crossover where we're becoming an older nation rather than a younger nation, which happens in developed nations. Here's another way of looking at it. From pyramid to pillar. In 1960s, you can see the very top line, those who are 85 plus on the left-hand side, with those who are 0 to 4, 5 to 9. And you can see it looked like a pyramid because there were very few 85 plusers and a lot of kids. Now it's kind of a pillar. It's kind of evenly distributed between 0 and 4-year-olds and 85 plus year olds, getting pretty close to being about the same number. All of those because of trends of what we talked about. Marrying later, having kids later, having fewer kids, having a longer lifespan. All of those things come into play. And so that's a little bit of what we're seeing in the world. Here's an interesting quote, and I want your opinion on how our culture views 60 plus. So this author says, perceptions of aging and late adulthood vary significantly by culture, with Asian, African, and Latin American cultures bestowing authority and respect on those who are aged. By contrast, undeveloped countries, where even toy tank engines are evaluated on the basis of their usefulness, that's a Thomas reference if you don't get it, old adults who no longer work often feel devalued and put out to pasture. What does our culture, do you think of older people? Livy.
I worked at a nursing home this summer for 4 months, and it was shocking to me how little even the residents of that home were valued. And that was like the workers' jobs was to give them value and care for them. And I had too many coworkers that didn't really want to be there and were mad that they had to care for these people. And it was just so backwards to how I thought that they should be treated. And I think that is culturally consistent too, of just not valuing our older generations and not seeing them as being valued and showing them respect because of the life they led. There's so much wisdom and life experience that people my age don't have because we are young.
Sure.
But we're not looking to our older generations to find that wisdom. We're trying to look to each other, and it doesn't work.
I appreciate that. Other thoughts? Agree? You see what Livy sees? Or Heather, you're shaking your head yes?
Yeah, I think young children and older adults, I think in a culture that values productivity and what are we producing, what is your monetary value, right? This kind of stuff. Don't get the value of just inherent worth in either an infant or an older adult.
Okay.
They typically need more care than maybe they're producing, right? I mean, so it's that flip of, are you valuable for who you are or valuable for what you provide?
Sure.
So yeah, I think culturally that makes a lot of sense. It's what I've seen too on both ends of the life cycle, and it's very sad.
Yeah, so you could say both sides need taken care of in a lot of ways and aren't contributing in a lot of ways, and so
doesn't care about as much, in
sure.
terms of that for young children as much, so there's I feel like both ends of the lifespan are not getting the care and value.
Okay. Other thoughts? Those of you that are in it, I want to hear from. Anna.
This is not directly answering your question, but just an interesting observation is that I feel like proximity makes a difference too in different situations, different cultures, because in some cultures you have the elderly and children are very much incorporated into the same home. They mean, even thinking about when my grandparents were living with us and my brother's kids would come over, my brother's kids loved spending time with my grandparents loved spending time with them. So because of that proximity, they could actually see the value in one another and enjoy that. Whereas if you know, that an elderly couple is isolated from younger people, like you don't I don't know, there's something about proximity, I feel like.
I appreciate
in
that.
our culture, we're a lot more individualistic, and
Yeah.
even, you know, when people are adults and then elderly, you know, Independence Village, that's kind of the idea, is continuing to be as independent as possible. And so I think proximity makes a difference too.
That's a good word. Because that, like you said, and I like how you connect it to individuality too, because that is our American dream, is being able to get out of my parents' house and be somewhere else, right? Which that's not true historically or even culturally around the world, but that's what we want, man. I want to get out and be in my own place. And to be with my parents or to have them with me is considered a bad thing in many ways. We lose that proximity.
And the proximity also allows you not only to like be in a relationship with one another, but it allows more actual productivity, because I think about, like, I had a friend from Cuba who she talked about how her grandma, even when she couldn't be around as much, she would always be peeling peas, or what did you call that? Digging the peas out, you know. So she'd always be doing something that could help the home. But and kids too, like they can help cook, but they're going to need more support than what they're actually producing. And similar to the elderly, they're going to need more support than what they're producing, but they provide something for the kids. They can watch the kids,
Yeah.
and be with them and give them attention that the parents don't have time for, and different, and vice versa.
Sure.
Yeah, I think the cultural aspect, and it's there too, is significant. I was living in South America, the host family there, and they were like, oh, where do you go to school? I go to school in Chicago. They're like, oh, your family's in Chicago. I said, no, my parents live in Houston. And they were like, well, are there no universities in Houston? Like, why? How? Why? Like, it's so strange, I think, to have the whole world except for us.
Yeah.
And it's just like, why would you live thousands of miles, unless you had to, unless it was like, this is the only way to further my education. So I think, yeah, we're very...
That's interesting.
Very
Yeah.
odd.
Yeah. Jill.
I think busyness has a lot to do with it too, like just as far as the connections with families that have children. Like, because I was thinking about when I lived in Toledo, you know, I lived in the city limits, and so our neighborhood, everybody was like, you know, you were right next door, and across the street there was an older woman who was a widow. She would sit out on her stoop, you know, in her house coat, and she had one son, and he would come by occasionally, but I mean, like, I wasn't like, you know, on the soccer league, or I wasn't on a, you know, all the things that our kids have been in. And so, like, I would go over there and I would sit and talk to her, and then she'd be like, Jill, I'm going to give you $10. Can you go down to the Lane drugstore and get me a half a gallon of milk? And, you know, she liked the National Enquirer magazine. And I'd be like, sure. So, I mean, it was like, you know, 4 blocks from the house. So I'd hop on my bike and I'd go do that for her. So, like, I felt like I had a relationship with her, but that was because I was 12, 13, you know, that age. But I just think that the busyness, you know, kind of separates us as well.
That's well said. Because there's so much research now about what that does between teenager and their parents. How much more does busyness separate you from everybody else, right? If you don't even have time to look your parents in the eye and have conversations, you know, except when they're sitting in the back seat because you're driving them from place A to place B. Yeah, that's real. Other thoughts, perceptions.
I'd put it, well, first of all, it doesn't like National Enquirer. And has not secretly wanted to read it. I think it's more mixed. Sometimes I think we tend to look at American culture. Some of the problems you describe, I think, are described as proximity and busyness and things like that. You know, there was a big article in the Atlantic a few years ago on single guys, their loneliness, just lack of proximity. It's not age related. It's a general cultural thing. But I see the flip side of it. I'm in a civic club where the retired guys and women are very highly valued. I watch families like fight just as long as they can to keep mom and dad in their home, and then move into their home until the healthcare becomes, you know. There's points at which you just don't feel qualified
Could be. Anna?
Just to tag on that, because like there's a like I've had a different experience where I work at the hospice place that like all the staff there, in contrast to what you were saying, are like they are very respectful and loving of elderly, and the families that bring their family members there are also of that mind. So I see a lot more than you might see at a typical place, a lot more like respect and stuff like you were saying. But again, I feel like there's that thing of proximity, because I was thinking the other day, because like my nieces and nephews are really good at interacting with elderly and people with disabilities and stuff. And I thought, well, it's because like I grew up without a dog, so I always feel comfortable around dogs because I don't know how to interact with them. Kids also, if they grow up in situations where they're interacting with older adults, elderly, with their parents, like they're gonna feel more comfortable with that and value that more. Whereas like comparing, if your parents are going and spending time with people who are older or whatever, and the kids are with them doing that, the kids are gonna learn how to do that. But if instead parent is going and interacting while kid is in the corner on the phone, the kid is not gonna learn how to do that. So again, like being close to your parents doing those things teaches you to have that value and respect. And that's what I see in the families that end up having their family members come to where I work, is that I'm sure they have grown up with that valued in their home and taught, and so, yeah, it's not everywhere that's not valued, but I do think, again, like your experience and what your parents have taught you in the proximity of being around people. Like
Sure.
my mom used to take us to, play instruments for people, the elderly, Christmas carols at homes of shut-ins and
Yeah.
stuff like that. And then just being in church, you're around
Yeah.
people of all ages. So that makes
You
sense.
hope. Not all churches are that way, but
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
Just push back against John for a minute. I mean, there's obviously examples where the elderly is cared for and adored,
Certainly.
thought well of. But I would argue those civic organizations are primarily older people anyway. You're not getting young people at the Lions Club. Would be my,
That's not, I mean, I don't know. They're aging in general, that's true. The particular one I'm a member of, it's not young by any means, but it's not all retired people. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that, because Olivia got a scholarship from the Delta Township, and, I went with her to the lunch, and there wasn't anybody my age or younger there. They were all older.
That is definitely not true.
So, and that's just one point. But I mean, I think as a society, though, this is correct. I mean, there's a reason that there are nursing homes that are filled with people who are unvisited, uncared for, that they're run down because nobody cares. I think as a society, we don't value our elderly. We look for places to push them out to pasture.
I would push back on that. I think you're right in the fact that in the end result, we don't care, but people, I think, are assuming that they care because I'm paying for a service that can do it better than I can. And so they think that they're taking care of them, even though they're not. But I think that's one of the things about our culture is you can subscribe to anything. And so went to your busyness and stuff like that. Well, I can subscribe to have my parents taken care of. I can subscribe to, whatever. So I can, because I know these are professionals, so I'll let them do it.
And there's different ways you can
Understood.
Yeah, there's different ways you could look at the same thing, because as a culture, we certainly have more safety nets and care systems for the elderly. So if you took that data point, you could say our culture is increasingly caring for. But those can also be handoff of the elderly. So it doesn't always mean, and so you could look at the same phenomenon from two different ways because both realities are present, right?
It's mixed.
Yeah.
It's not, I've seen families go to great lengths to keep their
Yeah.
beyond what they're really able to do. But I've also seen handoffs. We don't want to do this.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
mixed.
Vic?
Yeah, I was going to comment on the statement on the screen. The Asian, African, Latin American cultures are more similar to our culture and was in 1950. When I was growing up in the 50s, my grandparents were taking care of my great grandmother, and she was. I can remember her helping in the kitchen with the hog. They just butchered a hog or something. So great grandma was right in there with them, and it was, and the same thing on the other side. My grandmother lived with an uncle and aunt, and she was in the kitchen all the time doing something. So she was really integrated into the family. And I think the Asian, African American, and Latin cultures now still operate that way because they don't have much of an option. Really. They don't have the resources. That's probably not the only reason.
Yeah, that'd be hard to argue in some Asian cultures. I gotta get my battery. Sorry, my computer's gonna die. Keep talking.
Oh, keep talking? No.
I thought you were gonna keep going, Vic.
I was done. But
He's valuing your age.
yeah.
Keep going.
Do any of you guys, though, that are that table, do any of you feel devalued? By society at large. Don't just, I mean, okay.
Maybe you're going this way, but do you think there's a difference between Christian society or Christian groups and secular as far as how this goes? I mean, I think as a church, not being up there, but as a church, it seems to be like we value this generation. We look to you for wisdom, we look to you for guidance. When I was on the elder board, we had a wide range of ages and stuff. So I mean, I think as a church we do well. I would say maybe as a Christian society we do better than a secular society.
We'd hope, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if there's a differentiation. You'd hope there's a differentiation, but I don't know if anybody's actually studied that. You know, it's one of the challenging things about, you know, as we've gone through generational studies, and even like if we look at life phase studies, because generations are so diverse, any of us can find any example to prove any point. You know what I mean? I mean, Living Ainsley could find a lot of examples of iGens that are against LGBTQ and are, you know what I mean? But it is these larger trends that not everybody fits with. But what are some of the larger trends? I thought, let's think about this. Let's shift this because I do want to change the conversation on aging to think theologically a little bit. How do we think theologically about aging? So here's the first question. Is aging a result of the fall? Or would we have aged / matured even if Adam and Eve had never eaten from the tree? What do you think? How do we think about aging theologically?
Can you define age without saying age?
Yeah, age, man. Grow older.
I feel like maturing and aging could be different though, because like biologically, we are like cells are aging, our DNA breaks down, like all these different things that are called aging is a biological component.
But you might have just started talking fall language there, Livy.
Potentially, but
You use breakdown language.
But that's what I'm saying. That part of aging, the like breakdown, the slowing down, whatever, that could be part of the fall. But maturing could be just they are living for so long, they have new experiences. Their brain is like they're learning things still.
Okay.
And so I think that aging and maturing might be different. And
Fair enough.
Potentially the breakdown part and the slowing and the like the not so great things about aging could be part of the fall.
Yeah.
But I think maturing would probably, I would think maybe maturing would probably still happen just on the basis of experiencing new things and knowing more than they did when they were first created.
And there was some level of breaking down before the fall. I mean, our anatomy and physiology didn't change so much that we still went to the bathroom back then to get rid of waste. You know, I mean, there's always breakdown to some degree, but I know what you were talking about. Like, other thought, what do you think? What's a part of the fall?
I've always been interested in the fact that people live for 1,000 years and they're in they were in the 70s and
Yeah. So you're agreeing there's maybe an aspect of aging that is fall, but not.
It didn't hit them at 70 or 80.
Okay. All right. Vic?
What age are we going to be at? If we knew that, then we might be probably after the death.
Larry said 33. The typical Christian answer, assuming Jesus was born in 0 and was crucified in 33. Both of which are probably wrong, but. Any other thoughts on this? I like the age difference, aging versus maturing. And you even mentioned, Vic, in your answer, you associated aging with decline and decay. You know what I mean? You said, man, I hope I'm in better shape. So, any other thoughts theologically? I mean, I think nobody enters this world except Adam and Eve as mature adults, correct? So it would seem that there is a process of aging that is God designed even prior to the fall. So we have no indication that Adam and Eve started as infants, but every child thereafter did. So they would have to age. So aging ain't bad in and of itself. Maturing is certainly, I think we can all argue maturing pretty easily. We like maturing, wisdom, all of that stuff. So yeah. So again, there's a little bit of elements of both. We do got to define when we're talking about the aging, is it the things that we liked, the reflection, the faithfulness, the anticipating heaven, the wisdom, or is it the back pain and the, what part of aging are we? Tom, were you going to say something?
I was just going to say, we know for a fact that Adam and Eve couldn't procreate before the fall because the pains of childbirth are constant.
They were commanded to procreate, weren't they? Yeah, they were commanded to procreate. Be fruitful and multiply.
So when they were kicked out, they were prohibited from coming back because of the tree of life.
Or the flaming swords, yes. Protecting the tree of life. Yes.
They weren't allowed access to the
Correct. Yes.
So obviously that type of human decay would not have occurred in the garden.
Right. But aging would have.
Aging, mature.
Mature.
I think that's why I asked, what does age mean? Because every time you go around the sun, you're old.
Exactly.
But that doesn't mean necessarily that your body
correct.
Changed.
Yeah.
And you can't jump as high, you can't run as fast. I mean, I don't know how we can determine.
Yeah. But it is interesting to think about. I mean, what are the effects of the fall? Because it does change. How do we think? Fundamentally, how do we think about aging? And do we think, through the lens, in some ways we both have to look through both the lens of creation and the fall because we live in a created and fallen world. But when we look at the ideal, age in and of itself, it does have a maturing aspect, go back to what Libby said, but there's also a decay aspect because of the fall. Another question. What might God's purpose be for aging? Or how might his purposes for our sanctification be fulfilled through the process of aging? What is the purpose then? If the process of aging is natural, because Adam and Eve's kids would have gone through it, it's not inherently fallen, aging isn't, what's the purpose? What's God doing with it? How does God work in that? Little Hebrews, you have one life kind of thing. Interesting.
It's not a fully formed thought. When we were talking before about independence or this concept of wanting to be independent or separate kind of thing. I know that suicidality increases when people feel that they're burden to others. So we're trying to help combat that, right? But then kind of trying to, so then culturally, how do we communicate? Again, value is not tied to your productivity, because we can't be confused and it's not doing anything to your value. And your value to this community. right? So almost like we used to say, we need to come to be a child, right?
Yeah.
Right? And so the same kind of idea of this is forced dependence a little bit. I don't know this week, so I'm going to focus on that. Like, I had to ask for help and accept it.
Yes.
And, you know, like there's these things that God does for our hearts and for our communities and for the people around people who have the need.
Okay.
And how do we hold, you know, so I feel like there's a lot of sanctification of an individual and community when there's a need.
Even so, and what you just said there, Heather, is that God works through even the fallen aspects of aging.
I don't know that this is like the purpose.
Yeah, no, I like that.
Like
God
can use
that.
a shifting sense of you could drive and now you can't.
Sure.
My grandma, right? And what is significant, right? The thing that required
Yeah.
humility and need and
Sure. Yeah.
Right? All of these things. I think there's a lot of God work that happens in
Yeah. That's good. I like that. God does work through as we are more dependent upon others, more dependent on Him, less able to
and how do we understand, right?
be productive and
Sense of,
yeah.
Depending on other people and it not becoming crushing.
I like that. Let's talk through a couple of different aspects just because our time's getting a little short. One aspect is obviously retirement. A big thing for the 60-plus population. He writes, when the life course was shorter, again, this is just looking culturally, it was not uncommon for people to remain working until they were no longer able to function. You can imagine that true with a shorter life phase, without safety nets of retirements and social securities and all these things that our system has implemented in recent decades. You work until when you can't work. The idea of I'm going to have decades after I end my working is relatively new in the grand scheme of things. He says many factors influence why and when a person decides to retire or is forced into retirement. I thought this was interesting. We'll go through these quickly. Pathways to retirement. Number one, it talks about the continuers. Those who use the same skills from earlier careers, maybe in a part-time setting or a different context, but you're using similar skills. There are involved spectators, those who remain connected to their previous work, but maybe take different roles. There are adventurers, those who develop new skills and or new work roles. There are easy gliders that are called, those who relinquish work roles to keep their schedules flexible because they got other things going on. Retreaters, despair that no work roles can be found to provide satisfaction. And then searchers, those who continue to search for suitable work roles. Those of you who are retired, how did you, what was kind of your pathway? Did you slowly just kind of keep doing what you did, but in a different capacity, and then all of a sudden you moved into, you kind of set that aside totally, or what was the pathway to retirement? I'm curious. Fred, what was your pathway?
Well, I spent some time in Zimbabwe,
Okay. Yeah. Larry, what about you?
My goal in life was to become a CPA. When I retired, I did some options that I needed to help with my taxes. So we said, well, I took that a lot. I took some tests there. She had it for 6 years.
That's kind of an adventurer category. You just got new skills and started doing something different that was of interest to you.
And I put that when I put shoulder
later, it might not feel it, but that's a good idea.
Yeah. Jim, what about you? Fair point. No, I cannot. What's that? He's a continuer. Yeah. Yep. Okay. Sure. Sure. Yeah, like that. I'm curious. Let's keep this discussion going because they talk about the transition to retirement, and some people have talked about it this way: that initially there is, a standard honeymoon phase. There's a feeling of relief, like I am retired. I've been planning on retired. I've wanted to retire. I'm here. But that can often move towards disenchantment because you do start to miss the regular routine of seeing the same people. You do miss friends that maybe you've known for years or decades. You miss some purpose, Heather. You were talking about that, that I'm getting up because I'm going to accomplish this. Then there's sometimes a little bit of a resolution reorientation. So maybe you experiment a little and you find new people to connect to or new rhythms. And then you start to stabilize. New investments of time bring new meaning. Is this real for those of you who have retired? Is it a process that you go through like this or no? Anybody resonate with that? That's retired? Okay. Yeah. That quickly stabilizing, and now you're doing different places and serving in different ways, and yeah. Go ahead, Laurel.
Well, I'm not retired yet, but I just in looking at that, it just struck me how closely that compares to stay home moms and the kids at home. Very similar. We go through that same stuff.
That's helpful. Maybe this is the kind of thing that it fits a lot of settings, doesn't it? Yeah, fits a lot of different situations that maybe you've been anticipating for a while, and for a little while it feels great, but it takes a while to reorient to it. Yeah, change in role, certainly. One of the things that we've been, and I'm rushing a little bit just because I see the clock, one of the things that we've been trying to think about a little bit throughout this is, how does all this stuff affect how we minister? So let's look at ourselves both as individuals, as family members, and as a church. How do we help those who are transitioning roles and maybe moving out of work, moving into retirement, maybe moving into a new home? How do we minister at those times, recognizing that there can be this honeymoon phase, this disorientation phase, different things like that? How can we serve our community in that way when we see people going through these transitions? How do we minister to them? Opportunities? Yeah. Sure. Sure. Connections, places to serve, places to connect with other people. Yes. Yeah. Other thoughts? What do we need, Brian? Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Finding new ways to serve, things like that. We can help people in that regard. Yeah. What else? How do you walk with people through these phases? Anna?
Well, I think I was just kind of walking into the phase, but like just I think something that's going on with recognizing the skills that people have in either those people reaching out to younger people who are going into that field or whatever, or younger people reaching out and having a mentoring relationship. But specifically, if you also if you're like taking advantage of those people that people who are trying to go into the field and then also just I think especially because everybody's so different, that proximity factor again is really important because being, I mean, whether it's your parents or grandparents and they're retiring, just basically being there, like checking in on them, going to spend time with them because everybody's going to respond differently. You aren't going to know how they're doing, if they're getting depressed or if they're enjoying life and want to share about it. You don't know that unless you have that proximity.
Yeah. Staying close, certainly. Staying close to people, yeah.
Maybe
I like what you said.
Like if they're really busy, you've been really busy, and they've been busy with work, but all of a sudden they're not necessarily busy anymore. So like making sure you're there, knowing where they're at.
Well, we all know. I mean, even calling home to my parents in Ohio, you can realize how quickly 2, 3, 4 weeks go. You know what I mean? And you think, my word, I haven't called in 2, 3 weeks. And just things fly. Yeah. But to be very intentional about those we're ministering to, absolutely. Yeah. Jill, were you gonna say something?
I was just thinking of my parents retired and they were like in their 50s, but they had a couple of their church who had younger girls and, all their kids live far away, so they would see their grandchildren. So I know that, like, that was a special relationship. Like, I think about, like, younger couples at the church, so, like, if people who are, my age and older, or people who are retired or whatever, and their kids live far away, like, try to set up times to get together, or like I know Mike, he and Andrew, the boys have gone out like for breakfast, and my husband loves that.
Yeah.
I'm not saying he hasn't been for anything, but like he loves kids, and so
yeah.
So I mean just stuff like that. I think like when you do those kind of things, you really for people away, you don't really realize.
I think there's a struggle right now in the time and age that we live. Because I look at when we started here 25 years ago at Denver Baptist Church, there were people my age now who were retired, who were able to serve. Like I think of moms, there were a ton of the wives of older women, right, that led the Bible studies. That age is working. You're working. My wife's working. There's not that same opportunity anymore. So that's changed, I think. And then also because society has changed, lifestyles have changed, we don't really have, we used to have a choir. I'm not saying we need to bring the choir back, but there was multi-generational, in the choir. There was moms in there when there was multi-generational. I don't know church at large, not just Denver Baptist. I think we've lost some of that. Where there were these opportunities to be together generationally. But I think, people aren't retiring at 50 much anymore. I mean, I'm at the age now people start asking when I'm going to retire. I don't know when I'm going to retire.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll probably work till I die. I mean, it's just...
Retirement's not in the Bible.
Right.
I think along what you were talking about, like 25 years ago, when Kim and I went on the mission field, like our what we called our orientation class was mostly retirees. It was the number one group of people heading onto the mission field was retirees 25 years ago. And I think, based on what you said, people 50, 55 aren't retiring.
Yeah.
But so that was the first thing I thought of when you put that up there. How do you minister to them? Man, my generation, they were the ones still encouraging us because they were going off on the field. Because the world has gotten so much smaller.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
We talk about what other people can do, but what about me?
Yeah.
Yeah. I had the purpose in my mind. I wasn't going this way back. I'm going to
like that.
How do you teach that? How do you share that? With somebody who's struggling with, I don't feel like I fit in.
Yeah.
I think he models that, right?
Yeah.
So like, I mean, I don't know you on a personal level, but I'm sure people around you who know you on a personal level, they see that in you, and then that's a model to them.
But where can he model it?
I think
Right, because the men's breakfast, and again, I don't mean to come across as critical, but the men's breakfast happens when I'm going to work. Right? So if I want him to see him modeling what growing old godly looks like, where's that supposed to happen?
well, maybe you find him having the same thing. Right? Let's go out for breakfast, because I'd like to ask you some questions, and I'd like to get to know you. And just, I mean, I don't know, like, I have my dad, like, I have watched him since retirement, and I'm like, if I can be like him, like, he retired, he was a baseball coach, he was a teacher, he went and did mission trips over to baseball in Ecuador, like, 4 or 5 times, and then he's done, right now, he's working for the jail ministry in South Carolina. Down in September, he took me, and he's so like these guys who have come to Christ in jail, and they have this home that they go to when they're let out, and they mentor them, and now he's mentoring them, and he's pleased. But I'm like, he is investing in people, and I don't live by him, but I see what he's doing, so that's an encouragement to me to minister as I get to the age. So I don't know, I mean, like, modeling, it's just, like, for Jim, it's whoever sees Jim. Like, there's going to be people in your life that you look at and think, I want to be like them when I get to be that age. And, I want to serve like that. I don't know, that's just how I feel.
Yeah. And I mean, and hopefully, there are, I mean, this is, last 8 weeks we've been in the same room with Jim, so there are some multi-generational settings that we try to foster, and, there's other places to get them and things like that. Yeah. Hate to do it, but we got 2 minutes left, so we need to finish up. There were a few more things. We're going to go through, I'll talk about all the physical things that happen when you get old, but we just don't have time for that. What's that? Yeah, that's right. If you want to talk to Larry afterwards. So, hey, probably the big idea, the big idea of this fall, and again, hopefully, thinking about generations and life phases, just kind of a fun, interesting to think about, interesting to talk about. Hopefully we have some good conversation. But I think the 2 big ideas, right? One, this idea of contextualization. This idea when it comes to my circle and praying for people and serving people, we need to get to know them and meet them where they are, right? That's what God does with us. Now, obviously, God doesn't want us to stay where we are, right? But he meets us where we are. And so to young people, old people do some weird things. To old people, young people do some weird things. But they all need Christ, right? So when it comes to my circle, hopefully just kind of some general understanding and encouragement to reach out beyond our monolithic, hanging out with people that are just like us. So hopefully it encourages on that. And hopefully the other encouragement is a little bit of this Romans 14:1, Romans 15:7 thing. Accept one another just as Christ has accepted you. Yes, there are differences. Yes, we live differently. We're growing up in a different world. Not all differences are sinful. Not all change is sinful. Sometimes difference just different and change just change. But if we've been all saved through faith by the shed blood of Jesus Christ, we are family. And so we need to accept one another, like Paul says, right? Neither male nor female, slave nor free, Jew nor Gentile. And we can throw generational stuff into that, and we can throw different things into that. We are the body of Christ. We need one another. So we need to model this acceptance with one another. So hopefully this fall was just a fun way to bring up a few topics to talk about those things, but really encouraging the body of Christ being accepting of one another and reaching out to everybody for the gospel. because it doesn't matter who they are, they need the gospel. So that was kind of the underlying goal. Hopefully you captured some of that, and hopefully it was fun along the way. But for now, we're off until January. You'll hear more things on Sunday morning and in the bulletin about when January starts up and everything like that. But we hope we will see you then.